All right, hi everyone. Thanks so much for joining our webinar on the evolution of data.com. My name is Dave Nelson. I am Managing Director of Traction Complete, which is the product arm of Traction on Demand. Traction on Demand is a Salesforce consulting company entirely focused on the Salesforce platform. We've been around almost 12 years now, and I think we're getting close to 600 employees. And over the years, we've had a lot of repeat requests for similar functionality. And so back in 2014, we started productizing some of those repeat requests. And the first of those products was Traction Hierarchies. So a lot of customers were asking us to automatically link together companies that are part of a broader business, like an enterprise, for all sorts of reasons. They wanted to be able to report on their largest customers and how much they're spending with them, which is actually surprisingly difficult to do. They wanted to give their reps visibility into who else is involved in their large enterprise accounts where they're selling to subsidiaries and whatnot, so they can broker introductions and cross-sell. And they wanted to avoid those commission conflicts and splits. They were finding that as leads came in from kind of a mid-market company from a different geography, they were getting assigned to the mid-market rep. And later on, once they were getting close to the end of the deal, they found out it was part of an enterprise that probably should have gone to a named account, and it was causing these commission conflicts and whatnot. So we built an app leveraging the Dun & Bradstreet data through data.com that then linked those accounts together, put it on the App Exchange, and it was quite successful for a lot of customers. So shortly thereafter, we built a second app that also leveraged that Dun & Bradstreet data through data.com. They would bring in the firmographic data onto leads. So as a lead came in, they'd enrich it with the geography, so the address data, number of employees, annual revenue, and industries, that sort of thing, so they could use it for routing purposes. So the apps have evolved a lot since then, but all of those original customers were data.com customers. They all had data.com clean, and mostly premium clean, but we'll talk to that in a minute. And that all of those original customers have been asking a ton of questions on what's happening with data.com evolving into Lightning Data. What does that evolution look like, or a migration project look like? What should they be looking at? And so we wanted to put on a webinar to try and answer those questions for everybody, as well as people who aren't leveraging our product, to get those questions out there. And we've been lucky enough to be joined by Mark Delurgio, who is the Senior Director of Product Management at Salesforce. And Mark owns the Lightning Data platform and has a long background with data.com. So Mark, thank you so much for joining us.
Great to be here this morning. I joined data.com almost 6 years ago, and really from the start been working closely with Traction and our mutual customers on apps like the data.com assessment and also Hierarchies, and I've always heard from customers how much value they've gotten out of these apps. So great to be here this morning to help our customers plan for their transition to Lightning Data.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. So as an agenda, we'll kind of run through a quick overview of what's happening, what's going away and when, the specific products that are being retired, the fields and the objects that will actually disappear as they get retired, and then things that customers want to consider. So what might rely on those that will be interrupted or affected if they don't do anything before that end date. So the things to consider, and then what an actual migration will look like. And then we'll leave lots of time for question and answer at the end. So please feel free to post any questions you have in the webinar, and we'll try and get to those nearing the end. So Mark, maybe I'll pass it over to you to talk through the specifics around things going away and whatnot. Is that all right?
Sounds good. So we've been getting the word out for a while that this transition is happening, but we're getting very close to a very important date, which is just a few months from now. After July 31st of this year, customers can no longer do a full year renewal of data.com Clean and Prospector. And any renewals up to that point can go no longer than July 31st of 2020. So that date, July 31st, 2020, should be the point at which almost all of our customers will have transitioned off of data.com and moved to Lightning Data. One important point is that some customers do have current contracts that are beyond that July 31st, 2020 date, and we are honoring all customer contracts. But if you are interested in moving earlier, you can work with your rep on a transition plan even prior to your contract expiration. And so we want to get these dates out there and encourage you to start doing your analysis on your transition and share more details today. And if you have any specific questions, if you have a renewal coming up and you're wondering what the transition will look like, how the licensing works, et cetera, you can reach out to your account executive or renewal manager.
Awesome. Okay, thank you. So maybe some specifics there. We had a bunch of questions from customers on their specific scenario. One of them was, what happens if my contract ends in June of 2019, so prior to that July 31st?
If your contract ends in June, you actually have a pretty decent way of maximizing your time with data.com, because at that point you still could do a 12-month renewal. But that being said, if you're moving to Lightning Experience, or if you just want to get the new latest, greatest functionality, some of the benefits of the Lightning Data Platform, you're welcome to transition this June also. It's really up to you.
Okay. And how about if a customer's renewal is in September, so just after, a couple months after the July 31st?
In that scenario, we no longer can do an annual renewal. And as most of you know, we don't do typically less than 1-year renewals. And so really the plan for that is to transition to Lightning Data. So an even more dramatic scenario is literally this August 1st, if your renewal comes up, you should have already planned your transition to Lightning Data.
Okay, so important then in that time frame to be looking at all this stuff immediately. Sounds like.
Yeah, definitely.
Did I hear you say that? Did I hear you say that if someone has a multi-year contract, so if they've already signed up till let's say 2021 or 2022, that they'll continue to have it? Is that right?
Yes, and since we're doing this transition, Lightning Data, most of you know probably already, it's sold on the App Exchange by our Lightning Data partners. We would just, of course, want to honor all current Salesforce customer contracts. Sometimes people want to clarify this point because in the past, if we're asking customers to swap to a product that's sold by Salesforce, we might be a little bit more aggressive in asking customers to transition even within a contract. But in this case, Lightning Data is sold on partner paper, and of course we will honor all Salesforce contracts for the life of those contracts. We actually have, through our partnership with DMV, a pretty decent number of customers just through January 21, but after that it'll get down to pretty low numbers. Okay.
Yeah, I can imagine that most people have made them. We're seeing people have already made the transition already, and then lots more coming up pretty quick here. But so if I understand it correctly, then it's less about the July 31st date itself and more around whoever's contract or whenever the contract for each customer comes up.
Yeah, it's a really good point. It's not like a typical feature end of life where when a certain release rolls out, then all of a sudden the feature is gone. This is directly tied to your data.com contract and the expiration date of that contract. And one more point I should add, even if you want to do a 3-year renewal, for CRM, you're still, of course, welcome to do that. Of course, our renewal managers would love to do, a typical renewal of 2 to 3 years or even longer. But for the data.com line item, they will just operate in these parameters of the dates we just discussed.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that's a good distinction. Thank you. Okay, so maybe let's move on to what's actually going to be retired, the products, because I know that there are a couple different products associated with data.com, and within those, a separate version as well.
Yeah, so most of you are familiar with this, but just to make sure we're setting the stage clearly. So data.com Prospector is focused on searching and importing Dmv company records and data.com contacts into CRM. And then on the Clean side, it's focused on taking your existing records, things like accounts, contacts, and leads, and matching them against our data sets, whether it's Dmv companies or data.com contacts, and enriching that data, keeping it up to date in your CRM and adding additional attributes to drive your business. And then we also sold separately have the premium add-on. And the premium add-on has an extended set of firmographic fields coming from Dun & Bradstreet. And so we're just going to click through a couple of slides on the, I think we glanced up there. The data.com tab is what most people think of when we talk about Prospector. And then on, so this is the data.com tab. So that's tied to Prospector. So when your license expires, essentially you wouldn't have access to this functionality. And then on the next screenshot, just a reminder of what the Clean application looks like. That most people think of it, even though it's kind of a back-end automation tool for data enrichment, there is the data stewardship flow, the comparison screen. So the Clean button that everyone knows and loves brings up this comparison screen where you can review and accept data coming from our two data sources. And so that will go away when your license expires. And then on the next slide, just a reminder on the Dmv company object. So that's part of the premium add-on, and it works with both Prospector and Clean. It can also be added to Premium Edition, and that includes the Dmv company object. So on the next screenshot, that shows some of the advanced attributes coming from Dun & Bradstreet that is tied to that premium add-on.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Because I imagine that companies have fully adopted that functionality, whether it's Prospector for downloading records or if it's Clean for kind of enriching and normalizing data, they'll be used to that and need to kind of retrain their employees into whatever they transition to. I know that some customers, including ourselves, are actually on Performance Edition or PXE, which is kind of both Prospector and Clean, but in the corporate version, I think. Can you talk us through what will happen for companies like that?
Yeah, if you're on Performance Edition, definitely work closely with your renewal manager because you actually have more options on that front. So like David said, it includes the standard version of Clean and Prospector, and also many customers have also licensed Premium, so they also have the Dmv company object. Now, since those kind of data.com features are included in Performance Edition, if you don't, when you come up for renewal, you should work with your renewal manager to determine whether you'd like to just move over to a version of Performance Edition that doesn't include the data.com features, and that's our recommendation. There is a SKU right now that does just that, and that would allow you to transition to Lightning Data sooner. If you don't want to switch product SKUs for whatever reason, you could do a renewal of your current Performance Edition version that includes the data.com features, but those features will be removed from Performance Edition on July 31st, 2020. So you just need to know, and it will be in your product-specific terms, that those features will go away on July 31st, 2020. And if you're wondering, oh, wow, I actually have a Performance Edition contract that goes beyond July 31st, 2020, we go back to what I said earlier, we definitely will honor all existing contracts, even if they go beyond that date. But at your renewal at that point, you wouldn't be able to renew with the data.com functionality.
Okay, that's interesting, actually. So then, kind of regardless of whether you change SKUs through your renewal or remain on July 31st, 2020, the functionality will disappear. And so it's probably best to go through that renewal with your account executive and talk through the options on the SKU that does not have data.com on it, I'd imagine.
That's definitely our recommendation. We on our side and also from our partners on Lightning Data, like many customers that are focused their business around the Dmv data and the DUNS number, we would like customers to transition across over the next kind of 15 months. Make it really smooth for everyone, both your account teams, your field service teams, and on the Salesforce side and our Lightning Data partner side, and don't necessarily want a very large number of customers transitioning that very last couple months, June, July 2020. So we think it's best when your renewal comes up to make that transition to Lightning Data.
Yeah, good point. And it's funny, I had a conversation yesterday with a friend of ours, Dean, and a customer. and they were saying that, yeah, the sooner you do it, the more potential you'll have for good negotiating options with some of the data providers and whatnot, which was a good point I hadn't thought of. Okay, so thank you for running us through that. So now that we have kind of an overview of the product, do you mind running through what it's actually going to look like when that license expires? So you already mentioned the clean button and the data.com tab, but I know that there's a bunch of fields that are going to be removed and other things. Do you want to walk through that?
Yeah, and this is actually the most important information to get out to our customers. You know, of course, I like talking about customers transitioning to Lightning data, and it has a lot of great benefits that are clearly, 100% based on customer feedback. But regardless of where you transition to, even if you transition to, no data solution to a standard app exchange package, there are some exceptionally important things you need to do in your org before your data.com license expires. And David just mentioned it's easy to think of things that you see like the data.com tab and the clean button, but when these fields are removed out of your org, so the Dmv company object and the data.com fields, just keep in mind that any reports that are based off of these fields will no longer work. Any triggers and workflows that are based on these fields will no longer work. If you use any of the data.com APIs for search, purchase, or match, those will no longer be available. So it's exceptionally important to inspect your org, not just your own team, but we've actually had customers where they thought they did their due diligence, but sure enough, another division in their company had keyed a really critical use case based on the Dmv company object. So we encourage you to get your hands dirty and do your due diligence well in advance of your license expiring, to make sure that you can transition all those reports and customizations prior to that date.
Yeah, and the ones that stand out to me and that we've seen from our customers are the Dmv company record for sure, because it has a lot of data in there. And then things like the NAICS codes and descriptions, DUNS numbers if they've leveraged it, and trade style. So a lot of times we've seen customers leverage those for their assignment rules or their territory management 2.0 rules or formula fields, that sort of thing, or even validation rules, where a customer of ours who made the transition already from data.com over to Dmv Optimizer hadn't, or I guess they skipped that step for one reason or another. They may have had someone leave who had known about what the work they'd done previously, and that it ended up causing a pretty significant interruption to them and having to go back and I think contract with Dmv to turn it back on while they made that change to code or whatnot. And so certainly best to avoid that. And so Mark, maybe can you walk us through the areas in the platform to be looking through for any of those dependencies?
Yeah, and as you kind of alluded to, having to scramble to try to get kind of a short-term contract to get the lights back on is not a position anyone wants to be in. So I know I'm emphasizing this pretty strongly, but I'm doing that really to support our customers' success in this transition. Because it's not easy to turn back on. It's not like we just flip a switch, because there has to be a contract in order for you to access the data.com functionality and more importantly the data within. So things like workflow rules, process builder, validation rules, reports, territory management. That's a good one, David. I'm glad you threw that one in. And to that point, obviously, our customers aren't just getting this data just to have more up-to-date records, as great as that is. It's really about these process automation features like assignment rules that are pretty mission critical. So any of your reporting dashboards, formula fields is a good one, lead assignment rules, triggers, and then even the data.com APIs, you might think, oh, well, I don't think we've done anything with that. I've been here 3 years and we're not using that. But sure enough, someone might have back in the past. So basically inspecting your Apex code, looking for things like the Dmv company object, or the DUNS number on the account object, things like that are highly encouraged.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was actually what focused our attention was the data.com APIs we've heavily leveraged in both of our products, in Hierarchies and Complete, for certain functionality. And so that we knew that as soon as data.com went away for any individual customer, that that certain functionality would turn off. So like the white space view in Hierarchies or the auto enrichment in Complete. And so we worked to try and integrate with, in that case, integrate with Dun & Bradstreet's Optimizer for Salesforce product so that customers can have that kind of seamless transition. But we know that there are customers, like you mentioned, who integrated with those APIs. They were public, so you could do it individually. And that they'll probably have a similar experience. So if that disappears, I would imagine they're going to see kind of error messages in their org. Is that right? If they don't prepare ahead of time?
Yeah, and again, we'll give you the scary stories just in the spirit of ensuring customer success, that our customers take these steps. But I would say the worst breakages were where a customer could not add accounts or edit accounts in Salesforce. Actually, these are two fairly large customers because of the trigger was dependent on the data.com fields on account. And then the other one was where their customers were not able to log cases, because their case save had a routing that was based on the Dmv company object. So yeah, some of these process automation customizations are super powerful, but also super dependent on these fields that will go away. Basically at 12 midnight of the day that your license expires.
Yeah, I totally agree. And we'll talk in a minute about what a migration project should look like, so what people should be, the steps we should be going through. But can you just talk us through what the potential options are for moving from data.com? I know that you've done a ton of work in creating the Lightning Data Exchange.
Yeah, we started building this platform about 3.5 years ago, wholly based on customer feedback, where customers were saying that they loved the native integration of data.com, but they really wanted access to additional data sources. And so we've been running the internal platform for several years for some of our services that are already part of your CRM license, like geocoding. And then also with the Clean product, if you just want to get an understanding of how Lightning Data works within CRM, you can check out the data integration rules for company info for leads, company info for accounts, which is based on the Dmv data in your Clean license. But back a couple of years, we started launching brand new apps. Again, the go-to-market is on the App Exchange from our Lightning Data partners. I love to see that we have 13 live partners now, a few more in final kind of configuration stage, and more being signed up every month. Of course, Dun & Bradstreet is live with Dmv Optimizer. Many of our large customers run their businesses, across multiple platforms, not just Salesforce, using Dun & Bradstreet data and the DUNS number. And so the Dmv Optimizer is essentially, the closest kind of replacement for data.com Clean. But again, as I mentioned, our customers wanted access to different types of data sets that are more niche and targeted. So a couple of our early partners were Bombora, which models B2B purchasing intent, really an amazing data company, super innovative, essentially leverages kind of ad tech for modeling purchase intent for companies. We use it at Salesforce with tremendous results in our marketing campaigns. And we also use HG Data, who is really the gold standard for kind of installed technology. So if you sell technology, it's great to know what your prospective customers are running, either behind their firewall or on their web pages, et cetera. So HG Data has a really interesting data set that models the technology that companies are running today. And of course, we have many partners that were on the App Exchange before and wanted to join the Lightning Data program, and some that are net new to the App Exchange. So we have a lot of offerings for you across firmographic data sets, and we really are happy to be at the point now where we've given our customers this ability to kind of shop around for exactly what data set meets their business needs. And over time, we'll be going deeper into industry-specific data sets and geographic-specific data sets. A lot of our European customers and Asia-Pac customers have really great providers that are looking at this platform.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. And I totally agree. I think you've done a great job of kind of providing that capability, because you're exactly right. A lot of the customers who have used data.com and that great DMV data for firmographics and whatnot are making the transition over to Dmv Optimizer, and at the same time want additional data, right? They want the Bombora intent signals and the data technology spends, like you said, and potentially others. So I think you've done a great job of offering those capabilities all in one place here. Do you mind running us through the specifics and what people should be looking for based on the features that they're leveraging?
Yeah, so data.com is fairly vast, and people think of it as one app, and there's different apps and different data sets. And of course, Lightning Data is fairly vast also. So I'll make one point up front. The focus of Lightning Data, and what has always been in the data business based on our customer feedback, what has provided the most value is that clean use case, taking your records in CRM and matching them against the data sources and enriching them at scale. So that really is the focus of the Lightning Data platform. And what we've done here is broke down the data.com product into specific types of use cases to help better guide you into where you can transition to. So if you're running data.com clean and your focus is enriching accounts, then your options are, you could evaluate Dmv Optimizer if you want to keep things kind of as status quo as possible and just leverage the DUNS numbers that you've already established in your org. We've worked very closely with our friends at DMV on making a very smooth transition on that front. And I would say we've had a couple of our largest Sales Cloud customers do this transition in a very, very quick timeline based on that transition and ability to leverage their existing DUNS numbers. And of course, like I said, the whole reason we built the platform, though, was to give you opportunities to look around. Maybe there's other data sets that you want to transition to. Maybe there's additional ones. And so just go to the Lightning Data section of the App Exchange. You could ask each of the Lightning Data partners for a data assessment, which we have built natively into the Lightning Data platform, where you can inspect your match rate and what attributes each provider provides. And as you might imagine, all of the Lightning Data partners have programs, and they're looking to this opportunity with data.com customers, and they have their own transition plans. But of course, wouldn't be leveraging the DUNS numbers. And so that's generally available today. Already great success with early customers transitioning over to Dmv Optimizer and other Lightning Data solutions. And then if your focus is enriching contacts and leads with contact data, that is one generally available on the Lightning Data platform as kind of a core platform capability. And Dun & Bradstreet has that live in their package today. And other Lightning Data providers are working hard to do their final configuration to do that contact and lead enrichment shortly. On the prospector side, it's a little bit more complicated. Like I said, it hasn't been a primary focus of the Lightning Data platform, and also working with our customers and really our partners on this one. Our partners all had pretty robust kind of search and import capabilities, and their search user interfaces were very tailored to their particular data sets. So for prospecting for accounts, we do have some capability for search and import. Partners like HG Data and Bombora are live with that today. But if you want to move to something like a standard App Exchange package for this, like Dmv Hoovers or our other App Exchange solutions, like I mentioned, most of our Lightning Data providers also have kind of standard App Exchange packages out there. You can do that. And then on the contact and lead side for prospecting, that's wholly App Exchange. We do not plan for Lightning Data to support search and import of personal information, of contact information. So you can work with our partners' standard App Exchange packages for the contact and lead prospecting use case.
Great, thank you. And you bring up a really good point. We've seen the same, that customers heavily leveraging Prospector have had an easier transition. They've been able to decide on the new vendor and and get additional functionality. You're right, Dmv Hooters, I got a demo of the other day. It's fantastic in terms of what it offers, but the migration there is really about training on the new platform that they go through, the new data fields, that sort of thing. Whereas we've seen a couple examples on the transition from data.com clean, both good and bad, where you're exactly right. Dmv has done a great job of leveraging the DUNS number fields for allowing customers to fairly seamlessly move from data.com clean over to Dmv Optimizer for Salesforce. And at the same time, we've seen customers who have approached it quickly and actually allowed data.com to turn off and then turned on Dmv Optimizer, and that caused a much more difficult transition. So they, I'll flip over to the next slide, but if they had some overlap, they could have migrated that unique identifier, that DUNS number, over into the new Dmv Optimizer DUNS number field, and then just allowed the bulk processes to run overnight and remap everything seamlessly. Whereas when the data.com subscription turns off and that DUNS number field goes away, it creates more headache, if you will, or more data work to then do that mapping after the fact. But Mark, could you talk us through kind of an example of what that migration might look like? Let's just work through maybe a specific. So if they've already gone through the analysis and what they're using, so let's say they were using data.com clean and they've chosen this type, let's say they're using Dmv Optimizer, and what that ideal migration should be.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much what you said of just, obviously the analysis of looking at the different partners and the selection process, but the migration is the key. That overlap is key. No matter what package you're transitioning to, you don't want your clean license to expire and then have to figure it all out. And so definitely encourage you to work with the provider you select on, and you can get it installed like in a sandbox and just work with them. Ask them if, obviously you don't want to be paying for these data sets, twice over the last couple of months of your data.com contract, but some sort of trial so that you can really test in a sandbox, a couple months prior to your migration at least. I'm talking like in vanilla scenarios, a couple months. If you have a lot of Apex code you need to change, then you should really start like as soon as possible. But at least a couple of months of testing in your sandbox, making sure how it would work, and then like David alluded to, essentially turning off your clean jobs, deactivating any data integration rules you have that are based on your clean product, so that you, in your sandbox testing, you can be wholly on your new solution, and make sure it's nailed down before, and then of course deploy to production, either immediately before your data.com license expires or immediately thereafter.
Yeah, and you brought up another great point that timeframes are tough to decide on, but they start immediately because you don't know what might be hooked in. So like code, custom code in the APIs or triggers into the fields that are going to disappear. And that, yes, obviously always do that in sandbox first before trying to move over to production. So I know we're running close on time here. And just to reiterate Mark's point there, to get kind of a seamless transition, obviously be prepared to look at all of those capabilities. If you have any questions or ever want any help, certainly reach out to us. We're happy to walk you through how to look through those things, because it's not actually easy to go through all of your triggers and your code, your workflow rules, etc. You're probably wanting to leverage the metadata API to do that. So Traction on Demand Services can certainly help walk you through that. And for any of our customers that are on the call, any of the Complete or Hierarchies customers, by all means, feel free to reach out. And we'll actually be running a second webinar session. We're doing a whole series on data.com. So in about a month's time, I think beginning of May, we'll be running the second session. They'll do a deeper dive into, in this case, in Dmv Optimizer, and they'll run us through the comparison, how it works in comparison to data.com. And all the new functionality that they've put in place and their new refresh rates and that sort of thing. So we'll send out another introduction to that closer to the date, and hopefully anyone interested can join that. And now we'll pass it over to any customers that have questions that we can answer. Okay, so if you guys do have any questions, just fire them into the webinar chat there, and we'll see them pop up. We're starting to see a couple have come up throughout. Mark, maybe you can answer this one. It says, do you need to be on Lightning to use Lightning data?
No, I'm actually glad that question came up. So any of our new user interfaces, like the comparison screen, are on Lightning. But overall, this is a data enrichment platform, and so you can configure it to run, and you can still see that same data from your Lightning data packages in Classic. So that's not a problem at all. But for your data stewards that want to review data coming in from the data vendor and accept data similar to how the clean comparison screen works, we essentially have a Lightning version of that, and they would have to just switch over to Lightning to do that use case. Same thing with the discovery functionality.
Great. Okay. Someone asks, will there be a document with more detail that outlines field API names, etc.? Yes, we will send out both a recording of this session, and we can also post a document with all those API field names, etc., to everyone attending or who's signed up. Next one, Mark, maybe for you. How do I find out when my renewal is up?
So you should just work with your renewal manager if you don't have that information internally, and they'll be able to provide that. And they generally will start reaching out, as you might imagine, several months prior to your renewal being up. But please do be proactive and just reach out to your AE or your renewal manager.
Okay. And actually, Mark, are they able to get any extension on that? So let's say they're in that non-ideal scenario where it's August 1st or September. Is it actually shut off that day, or will there be any grace period?
No, after August 1st this year, you cannot do essentially a renewal. Some customers, not necessarily driven by this, but just for a variety of reasons, some customers do early renewals of CRM. And if that's the case, if you decide to renew CRM early and you do it before July 31st of this year, you could renew for the entire year. You could renew essentially for 12 months.
Okay, yeah, good to know. And that's a great one for people to pick up on that. Yeah, just to make sure you do reach out to that renewal manager, be aware of that deadline, and obviously act accordingly. Awesome. Well, I don't see any other questions here, but like we said, we will be posting the recording of the webinar. We'll send out that document that Tom asked for, and we'll be hosting that second session. I want to say it's May 2nd. May 7th, thank you. So May 7th, and we'll send out the invite to that as well. And that if anyone wants to register, they can go to the link that we'll provide. So thanks so much, guys. I appreciate it. And feel free to reach out to us in the meantime, again, at contact@tractioncomplete.com if you have any questions. Thanks so much, Mark.
All right, thank you.
Okay, take care.